If you are doing this with your LLCs, you are missing out on key benefits, both in anonymity and asset protection. Let's talk about how to structure your LLCs the right way. Hey guys, Jeff Cottle here from Anderson Business Advisors, and today we're going to talk about one of the key mistakes that so many investors make as it relates to structuring their LLCs, and how you can avoid them so that you get the maximum benefit out of your LLC structure, both in anonymity and protection in court. Let's get started. So one of the threshold matters that we talk about here at Anderson Business Advisors is that you as an investor should not invest in your personal name, especially when it comes to real estate. This is because real estate ownership records are a matter of public access. County records, anybody can look them up. And so if you're investing in your personal name, then people can look you up and see what you own. And this is problematic because not only is it an issue of privacy, but it's also an issue of liability. If your assets are owned directly in your personal name, then it's very easy to take them in court. So what we recommend instead is that you own your assets in LLCs, almost always. There are exceptions when we might use trusts or corporations, but for today we're going to focus on LLCs. And in fact, if you want to learn more about that, we have a couple more videos talking about how LLCs and trusts and other things like that are so much better than investing in your personal name. But today we're going to take that one step further. We're going to say, okay, now that we're using LLCs, what are the key mistakes that investors make when they form their own LLCs or their own LLC structure? So one of the most common mistakes that we see that most investors, they just miss on is that they use just one layer of LLCs. They'll say, hey, I heard LLCs are good, so I'm going to put this together myself with just one LLC or just one layer, and this is sufficient. And this mistake costs these investors both from an anonymity perspective and it costs them in court from a protection perspective. Let's talk about why that is. So what happens here is when we use an LLC, but only an LLC. I'm going to draw this out for you here. When we use only an LLC for investing, we run into a big problem, or only one layer of LLCs. I'm going to use a Texas LLC here, and there's a reason for this. So we'll use a Texas LLC here. And let's say we own a piece of real estate in a Texas LLC. The first big thing that happens here is that Texas has some good protections in court. Not great, but they're good. But the first thing that happens is that Texas is not anonymous. I'm just going to write not anon here. What that means is that a plaintiff's attorney or any individual who is snooping around can look on the Texas Secretary of State website and see who owns that Texas LLC. Ooh, that's troublesome. Again, like we talked about before, because not only is it a loss of privacy, but also that can expose you in court where you're not protected, and a plaintiff's attorney, they may want to come after you because they can see that you own this LLC and that you might be a business or an investment owner, as we can see here. So this Texas LLC is not anonymous and it does not have great protections. So what we recommend doing then is we say, hey, okay, let's put this Texas LLC, let's have it owned by an LLC in another state. A state that has better protection. We call it a parent or a holding company. And in many cases for real estate, that's going to be Wyoming. Not always, but usually. And we have other videos talking about why Wyoming is so important. But for now, we'll just go and be a little reductive and say that Wyoming is excellent for asset protection because Wyoming itself is anonymous. So Wyoming is anonymous. And even more importantly, though, is Wyoming has excellent protections in court. Wyoming has excellent laws protecting LLCs and business owners from liability. And we want to leverage those laws. And very importantly as well, and this is certainly not the case in all other states, is that Wyoming judges have honored those laws, at least to this point. And so we want to take advantage of that. And so in Wyoming, then, we'll have a Wyoming parent company. And this Wyoming parent company owning the Texas LLC gives a couple of very important layers of protection. The first is that it makes this Texas LLC now anonymous. The Texas LLC on the Secretary of State website, it now lists the Wyoming LLC as the owner. And the second thing that happens now is that we get protection in court from Wyoming laws by having that Wyoming parent company. Again, Texas laws are good for protection, but they're not Wyoming level great. And so we want to have those protections in court. A couple of other states that have really good protection in court are Delaware and Nevada, and we will use them in some circumstances. But again, for our purposes today, we're going to focus on Wyoming. And so this is really important. And so many investors, they stop right here. They say, hey, I have a Texas LLC, or whatever other state it is, right? It doesn't have to be Texas. But they'll say, hey, I have a Texas LLC, therefore I must be protected, right? But that's not always going to be the case. And so because of that, we want to make sure we have a parent company. Now, a very similar and also common mistake we see here is this. Is that we will see individuals who use Wyoming LLCs directly to purchase real estate. Again, that problem that I told you about earlier, that one layer. Well, here we only have one layer as well. We don't have a parent company, but now instead we just have a Wyoming LLC that owns property directly. This is also problematic. Why? Because when the LLC owns the property directly, it becomes subject to the laws of the state where the property is located. So let's take a state that does not have good protections at all. I know this is going to shock you, but California does not have good protections for LLCs and for business owners. So if a Wyoming LLC owns a property located in California directly, the California property is deeded directly into the Wyoming LLC now becomes subject to California laws. Boo. This is bad. This is not what we want, because now we've just lost the protection of your Wyoming LLC. There's no reason to form it in Wyoming if it's just going to be subject to California laws. Or again, any other state in the country. Other states that have poor LLC protections might be Oregon or Florida or others like that. And so what we have then here is a loss of protection when the Wyoming LLC owns property directly. This again is why layers are so important. Much rather, we need to have that local LLC own the property so that that local LLC is subject to those local laws. But then the Wyoming LLC, it does not own the real estate directly anymore. So we'll look at the property. We'll just use Texas again here. So our Texas LLC owns the property, but then the Texas LLC is owned by the Wyoming LLC. This way, the Wyoming LLC does not own property directly, but instead all it owns is another business interest, not subject to Texas laws this way, or again, any other state. And then very importantly though, this local Texas LLC is the one that's listed on the county records. It's a Texas LLC, so it's already subject to Texas laws, but it's owned by the Wyoming LLC, giving it anonymity and better protection in court. And so this is why it's so important, though, to talk with a professional about your entity structuring, because this is just one aspect. Now, it is one that most investors miss out on, and they're missing out on key protections, but there are plenty of others that we could talk about related to LLCs and their operating agreements, tax elections, the number of LLCs you need. Do you need one per property? A lot of people do, but maybe not everybody. That's what we recommend, is one per property. Anyways, this is why it's so important to talk with a professional, because then they can talk with you about what will be best for your situation. So go ahead, there's a link in the description. Click on that link so that you can talk with one of our professional strategists about how to best structure your LLCs so that you are getting the maximum anonymity and protection benefits. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and click that like button and hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there's something else that you would like me to talk about. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you and take care.